Good evening, dear friends. Thank you for joining me again after a little pause to explore the book of Revelation to John, or the Apocalypse. We'd gotten to chapter 13 before I took a little break. Today I'd like to look at chapter 14. Again, one of those pieces of world literature that we could examine for many hours. I'll only try to bring out the main aspects and hope that whatever little insights I might be able to bring this evening will help those of you who try to study the book on your own, or perhaps with a group of people, using some secondary literature, using especially the book of the Bible itself is very important. Chapter 14. I've tried to see how I can finish up the Apocalypse in the month of November. So next week I'll be talking about chapter 15 and 16, which deals with the plagues and the bowls of wrath. And the week after that, Babylon, chapter 17 and 18, where we get into all of those forces, I would like to say, of retardation, those forces that try to hold humanity back from developing itself, and what happens to these in the face of the ongoing development as it's portrayed in the Apocalypse. And the week after that, chapters 19 and 20 represent what you might call the final battles of the Apocalypse, where you see the opposing sides that appear. And then chapters 21 and 22, the ultimate fulfillment, the New Jerusalem, you might say the invitation by Jesus Christ to join him, to take steps into the next phase of development. And that's really the key word to getting a grip on the Apocalypse, is development or metamorphosis. And it occurred to me, especially this chapter 14, with its mention of the trumpets and the harps, the harp players who play the harp on their harps, how musically built up the whole Apocalypse is. If you would take the great overview, you might end up with something like a good piece of music, which, if it's to be effective, is not going to be all super loud the whole time and arousing every emotion and awakening every instinct and tickling every nerve. But then you'll have in between the softer parts, the parts that give you pause to stop and listen, perhaps to go within, to ask yourself, where do I stand in relationship to this particular piece of music that's playing in front of me or in my ear, as we do it frequently nowadays. So we've seen parts of the Apocalypse that were almost seemed to be a kind of a big landscape. If you think of the 4th and 5th chapters, this door opens into heaven, and then the book is handed to the Lamb, and the Lamb opens the seal one after the other, and a horse and another horse and another horse and another horse, and then souls and disasters. And then we think of perhaps the 10th chapter, when the mighty angel descends from the heavenly worlds. And again, we would say here we would have the great, we might have a lot of, if we were thinking of a symphony, we might have a lot of brass and percussion. And then somehow it all calms down to very simple things. Take the book, eat it. It will be bitter in your stomach and sweet in your mouth. And then we're bound to one human being having one very intimate experience, where perhaps just a few instruments would be playing, or even a solo. And this goes not only for so-called classical, serious music, but a good pop song or a country song is going to have similar characteristics of loud and soft and fast and slow and reflective and energizing. And we come with this chapter 14 to one of those pictures after the dramas of the two beasts in the earth and the beast who arises from the sea. And before that, the dragon who was battling with Michael and his minions in the heavens and is cast to the earth and enraged, where we can almost have the feeling the earth itself reacts, revolts when this amazing force, this terrifying force, penetrates its substance and becomes part of the earth. And then this 14th chapter, I'm going to read it. So we have the actual chapter before us. It's not terribly long. And then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder. The voice I heard was like the sound of harp players playing the harp on their harps. And they sing a new song before the throne, and before the 4 living creatures, and before the elders. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. It is these who have not defiled themselves. They are chaste. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever it goes. These have been redeemed from mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb, and in their mouth no untruth was found, for they are spotless. Then I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. And the angels proclaimed with a loud voice, "Have fear for God and give him glory, for the hour of judgment has come, and worship the one who made heaven and earth, the sea and the fountains of water." Another angel followed, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink the wine of her impure passion." And another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and its image, and receive a mark on their forehead or on his hand, they too shall drink the wine of God's wrath, poured unmixed into the cup of his anger, and shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. And they have no rest, day or night, those who worship the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name. Here is a call for the endurance of those who sanctify themselves, those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, "Write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them." Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and seated on the cloud one like a son of humanity, with a golden crown on his head, and a sharp sickle in the hand. And another angel came out of the temple, calling with a loud voice to the one sitting upon the throne, "Take out your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe." So the one who sits upon the throne swings his sickle on the earth, and the earth is reaped. And another angel came out of the temple in heaven. This one too had a sharp sickle. Then another angel came from the altar, the angel who has power over fire, and called with a loud voice to the one with the sharp sickle, Put out your sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for the grapes are ripe. So the angel swung its sickle on the earth, and gathered the vintage of the earth, and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood flowed from the winepress, as high as a horse's bridle, for 1,600 stadia. So that's quite a dramatic picture. It would take us hours to discuss all of these things in great detail. I'm not going to do that. We could have a whole course on chapter 14. But just imagine how we lift our gaze. He says twice, and I looked, and behold. Constantly calling us to raise our gaze, not to concentrate purely on that material life which is right in front of us, but to see if we can begin to perceive, or at least to appreciate, if we don't perceive, that there is a realm not high up there, but around us, the angelic realm that permeates all of our being, that goes within our bodies and our thoughts and our feelings. The realm of angels that works in human beings. And that realm can be very different. It could be quieting us if we're upset, agitated. It could also enliven us in those times when our feeling is more like, oh, I'm so heavy, it's so difficult. I'm in the thrall of the beast. And those are good moments. Not because it's so great to be enthralled by the beast, but because it's good when we wake up and realize, what state am I in? And what am I going to do about it, especially? Not what is someone else going to do about it. Not who's going to pull me out of the swamp, but this wonderful old picture of the person pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps. How am I going to get myself into action again? We lift our gaze to the angelic realm. We turn to the world of angels. That could be with our thoughts, with our feelings, with our actions. There are many ways to put ourselves to the service of the realm of angels. And one might begin by listening. What do we hear? We are still in the realm of the seventh trumpet. When you get to chapter 14, and even as we go on to chapter 15, this amazing angelic trumpet is still sounding. I may have said this before, I don't remember. What we in 2020 think of as a trumpet, we might think of an instrument about a foot and a half long, with lots of coils and lots of valves, and that has a fairly small, narrow mouthpiece, a fairly high tone. I generally have the impression that these trumpets, although they're of course not material instruments, are something of a somewhat deeper nature, of a broader, of a more, let's say, a more baritone sound. They're often called in other languages trombones, Posaunen, Bazaun for the Dutch, Posaunen for the German. That's the limit of my languages. And these have something also awakening like the trumpet, but it's almost as if the trumpet sort of reverberates up here, and the trombone encompasses more our middle realm. And that's where I wonder, when we talk about working with the angels, is this where we want to be situated? Not up here, not so much in bright, brilliant thoughts, but in thoughts that are very much in motion with the heart, the rhythms of the heart, the flowing, the systole and diastole, the coming and going of the arterial and the venal blood, this penetrating our whole being and asking the angels, inviting the angels into ourselves, into our actions, into our thoughts and feelings, and listening for the finer tones of the harp. Once we've been awakened by the great trombone, then we can hear just perhaps a few notes on the harps. Just a few strings are being plucked by these amazing harp players who are playing the harp on their harps. Could it be at that point that the new song begins to resonate within us? It could be very simple, an idea, something really simple, like, what am I going to cook for dinner tonight? Or as complicated as, what is my next major move in life? Or how am I going to solve a particular conflict with my partner, with my boss, with my neighbor? It's in those moments when we can become very quiet, lift our gaze, open our ears, our inner ears, our heart ears, you might say, our heart vision. And it's not always going to be fun. We hear about those who have not defiled themselves, who are chaste and pure, where no untruth is found in their mouth, who are spotless. On the one hand, it sounds amazing to be that way, to be so in harmony with the heavenly vibrations that I can just simply acquire the knowledge and the experience of the angels. But this comes with a price, my dear friends. These individuals have worked hard. They have also been awakened, perhaps by the trumpets, perhaps by the wrath, perhaps by the natural disasters. And having been awakened, they acquire a feeling for what is true. And they begin to notice what untruths they might be carrying in themselves. They might hear themselves saying a particular nasty thing or something cynical or sarcastic, and all at once saying, that's not me. Did I say that? No, that's not the way I want to be. And slowly but surely you become conscious of yourself, of your own being, and what happens when I act in the world. How does my harp or my trumpet resonate out there? And of these 140,000, oh my, that has led to so many misunderstandings in the 2,000 years of Christianity. As if the Lamb or God or some great being were sitting up there going, oh yeah, I take you and you and you and you, and it gets very arbitrary, and we are materialistic thinkers. We think 144,000 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 144,000. So we're counting bodies or heads or whatever. I have the feeling this is a quality. Numbers in the Bible represent qualities, not quantities. The 12, which is an integral part of the 144,000, the 12, says Rudolf Steiner, is always the important factor in forming a community. In the early days of the Christian community, I remember hearing this often when I worked in Holland. As soon as there were 12 people who committed themselves as members of the Christian community and began to contribute financially or materially or with their actions, 12 people, then we could say, we found the Christian community, let's say, in Amsterdam. And you can look in the congregational book there and see at a certain point, I think in 1926 or 7 or 8, there was the 12th member, who was 18 years old at the time, and that's the founding. 144,000, there's a lot of 12s in there, and this 144,000 is kind of a fulfillment of this building community. You might say it's the community cornerstone for the transition into the next phase of human development on Earth. a first forming of the cornerstone. Many of you have seen these foundation stones that are laid in Waldorf schools, in the Goethe-Annum in Dornach, in many Christian community churches, under the altar or at the threshold of the front door. Often represents a kind of time capsule. And this cornerstone or foundation stone often has 12 sides in one composition or another. And this 12 multiplies itself qualitatively. Perhaps each of the 12 brings a friend or a friend of a friend, and it keeps growing and growing, and the 144,000 forms the first seed of the new humanity, which will progress into the phase that is not described after the apocalypse is finished. 144,000, striving for purity, perfection, striving. And then, because the time is going so quickly, perhaps just one other motif, since it is All Saints' Day, November 1st. Tomorrow is All Souls' Day, November 2nd. Kind of suddenly in the midst of this chapter 14, we hear this is a call for the endurance of those who have sanctified themselves, those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And I hear a voice from heaven saying, "Write this, blessed are those who die in the Lord henceforth. Blessed indeed, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them." This is a passage that's often thought about, meditated on now in this November month, when our thoughts often go to those who live on the other side of the veil. I say that consciously. Those who have died on earth, who have left behind their physical body, their life bodies, and living in the realm of soul and spirit. This time of year seems to make this veil or this curtain threshold more permeable. Many people's thoughts go to those who have died in this time of year. And those who die in the Lord, those who die in the Lord, how can we imagine that? Can we imagine that a human being has filled their thoughts more, let's say more, maybe not completely, have filled their thoughts and their actions more with the life of Christ on earth, for example, or with the life of the saints, followed inwardly and outwardly this example of those very special people who have gone before us. I told the children this morning the story of St. Francis of Assisi and said there are special people in the world that's like us because we're working really hard. And then there are super special people, and we call them saints. St. Francis, Joan of Arc, Mother Teresa, you could go on and on. And these who die in the Lord, we could also say those who die with the Lord in them, who have recognized inwardly that I am a human being. I am the individual who has come to the earth and lives in this body, works through this hereditary stream, through this ethnic stream, through this outer appearance. And this individual becomes part of that 144,000. I believe that the 144,000 are not rows and rows and rows of individual human beings who are exactly the same. If you look at a military formation, you'll see hundreds, perhaps thousands of men and women, every possible imaginable constellation, but all the same, uniform, tie, shirt, hat, boots. This is not the case with 144,000, I'd like to say. I see that someone is writing about the signs of the zodiac and the 12 disciples and so on. That's right. The 12 disciples were all individuals. They were not going in goose steps behind Jesus. They would be looking over this way and that way and wondering about this and trying to develop that, and perhaps trying to get rid of another aspect of themselves that was not helpful. And that's you and I, striving to become who we really are, striving to realize that individual that is born within ourselves at our physical birth and that develops itself through the years of childhood and youth and being a young person and so on and so forth. Those are the qualities that come together to form the 144,000. Those are the ones who die in the Lord, or, as I posed, who die with the Lord within them. So those were just a few thoughts about this amazing chapter 14 of the book of Revelation. I really do want to round this off in this month. So next week we'll be looking at plagues and wrath. So get ready. If you have time this week and are so inclined, have a look at chapters 15 and 16, and we'll have a good basis to listen and look at them next week. Thank you all very much for listening. It's a great pleasure to prepare these little explorations and to be together with you. Thanks so much. Have a good Sunday evening and see you next week.